This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Mark Firehammer. And I want to thank you and welcome you to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing this Saturday afternoon?
I'm doing great. I didn't know if you were talking to me or the audience.
Well, talking to you.
I'm great, Phantom. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I wanna thank you for being here. And we always, before we get to the heart of your story, we ask every guest a couple questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Oh, good questions. I think, the prime motivator, if you look at my life all the way back to being, 7 years old, is that I've always been driven to understand and then use what I understand to take control of my experience moving forward. And that
Mhm.
has never stopped. I'm 62 now. So I still get up every morning and say, how can I use what I know to have a better day?
Yeah, I think it's the being able to take advantage of like the tools and the processes and things as you come along. I think like I'm 57, and I've always, I'm an electronic musician, so I take advantage of the tech. Back in the day, it was like
Right on.
mini Moogs, which I do have a lot of Moogs. I got like three of them, but yeah, I mean, I have an Akai Force, so I kind of go from analog to whatever the modern tech is.
Over the
And
time, yeah.
yeah, because whatever serves the song. I mean, some songs deserve a guitar and
Right.
maybe a punk aesthetic, like a Husker Du or something, right?
We're going to have a good conversation. I didn't realize you were that deep into the electronics and the tech of it
Yeah,
all.
yeah, you can,
Are
you
you
know,
primarily a keyboardist first? You lead with that because that's the best interface?
yeah. Well, I'm a keyboardist first. I've got my Roland Junos and
Yep.
my my other Rolands, like my JD XIs and stuff like that. But then I've got a bunch of modular stuff.
Right on.
So I've got like a Mother 32, a DFAM, and then I got this a big like modular setup that's got like make noise modules in it, and so I kind of go. In some cases, I'll start off with like pure analog things
Yeah.
running from LFOs, all CV wired up,
Yeah.
very
Cool.
1970s, and then other stuff I'll start on my Akai, like an MPC.
Yep.
But I'll have my MPC hooked up to a Moog grandmother through CV, and I'll bring in the CV signals coming off a Moog coming into something like an Akai, and I'll use the alternative input method of
Right.
an Akai Force to actually use that sequencer, which is more advanced than what's on the Moog,
Sure.
like
Sure.
32, to be able to trigger things, in different ways. So
Right
I like
on.
to take the hybrid of having like a digital approach with, modern sampler, modern drum machines, but also like having a DFAM, which is like it's an analog drum machine. So
Yeah. It's funny. I'm so glad I've met you. It's very interesting to meet someone who leads with that. Because like a lot of guys our age, when I was in the 90s, I spent $20,000-$30,000 on a bunch of gear. But unlike you, I learned after all that expenditure that that's not my jam.
yeah.
Right? I'm more of the song crafter, and then I needed a guy like you, and I did find them in the 90s to help patch it all together and bring whatever technology and personnel we needed to make
Mhm.
songs happen. But I can't wait to hear some of the stuff you've done.
Yeah, it's out there under Phantom Electric Ghost. I'm on SoundCloud. All my newest stuff before it hits like the wider is on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
And then when I decide if whether or not I'm going to push it out to Spotify or Apple, but I have a bunch of stuff that's out there in the Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio world.
Yeah.
But then my newest stuff for 2025 is all SoundCloud, which I kind of kept it there because some of the things going on with Spotify I didn't like. So I got some albums that are just on SoundCloud. But
Okay.
I make choices based on whatever I think I should do. But yeah, but it's like to me, it's like the experience of just being. I call my stuff expansive sound.
Yeah.
I don't like getting bottlenecked or pigeonholed. So like if it's like I have a punk aesthetic, like I said, I like bands like the Replacements, the Clash, Who's to Do,
Yeah.
you know, you know, they play stuff like that, the Ramones. So I'll go that. Oh yeah, I like rock. Like Neil Young and Crazy Horse.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate, yes.
Well,
But
you just nailed the problem, and we're going to be in agreement on this. The problem that I experienced early on with the music industry in general is the pigeonholing. They're having all these artists and they put them in a box, and the new artists they say you need to do something like this.
Yeah.
And I remember going to an A&R meeting in '95. The guy's name was Brian. I can't remember who he worked for, but he listened to our track that we just completed, and he goes, "Yeah, that's cool." He says, "But can't you do something like this?" And he played a song that was like a top 100 thing, and we're like, "Dude, that's not
That's not
how
your
creativity works."
that's not your band.
Yeah, yes, that's crazy. The old chasing the hits, and
Yeah.
at our age, I don't know about you, but I get all these ads on Facebook because Facebook's algorithm knows I'm a songwriter.
Yeah.
And all the ads are trying to appeal to my desire to be rich and famous, to have a top Grammy winning hit. And I was like, you don't get it. That's not why I create the
Yeah.
songs that I create. Yeah.
You create it because you have your own artistic vision, right? You have you like if you wanted to be Keith Emerson, you'd like just play Emerson like a Palmer all day.
Right,
Play
exactly.
like
Yes.
you lucky man all day. There
Right.
are
Just
bands that
smoke a
do
little
that.
weed and just kick back.
Yeah, there are bands that go do it. They just Led Zeppelin cover, and they just I can get the people like that, and I can keep on playing that Rush cover band. Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
But
We have a client. We have a client who's in a Rush cover band. At least she was, and it was all girls.
Well, that's different. That's like Zepparella. There's a
Yes, I've heard of
I
that.
actually had their drummer and bass player on. I've
Yeah.
actually talked to them, but yeah, but she has they even have their own side band that
Yeah.
has original material because
Yeah.
like everybody's a musician. Like well, I might have this is my day job and this is my passion is my own band with my own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, in this modern world where we're living within a culture that, in many ways, requires you to meet certain standards of living, we have to have those day jobs if we're not John Bon Jovi or whomever. And in the '90s, I did a social experiment for myself and stepped out of culture and toured 5 years full time in a van. I didn't keep a home,
Wow.
didn't keep a bank account, didn't had a cell phone in the early days. But I realized the difficulties of that experiment where I have to step back into culture to get in front of the audience,
Mm-hmm.
and then step back out to go back on that bardic. I called it the bardic journey. As you mentioned, the creative vision. For me, it's a storytelling.
Yeah.
Almost everything I do tells a story, and you can string them together, and tell a story over a decade or whatever. So,
Yeah, because I think a lot of times it's like creativity. I think one of the things you wanted to talk about was like it isn't about being gifted, but maybe understand how it works, or maybe how it works for you.
yeah, yeah. I think you probably are aware of what Billy Joel and James Taylor and Carly Simon all said about creativity. That in the early days, when they were young and idealistic and like hungry, they would have these flashes of inspiration. And one of the things that they all said in common, and I totally agree with this because I experienced it as well, is early on, flashes of inspiration is kind of the universe teaching you how to create a song by giving you one or two or three, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as the life and your career and all the burdens and concerns and worries of having a business in music, that begins to shut down the portal to those flashes of inspiration. But Billy Joel said it first at the BAM concert, Brooklyn Academy of Music. This was in early 2000, late 90s. He said, when the flashes of inspiration started, I then relied on craft skills.
Mm-hmm.
Because he says inspiration is all around me, man. And he tells the story about the Italian restaurant, the bottle of wine, bottle of wine, bottle of wine, bottle of wine. He said the waiter comes up and he goes, "Good evening. What can I get you? A bottle of red? Or a bottle of white, bottle of red? Perhaps a bottle of rosé instead." And Billy Joel was like,
"That's it.
Thank you."
Well, that's the thing. Like when I've talked to writers, it's like the authors, like they're out there absorbing conversations, experiences, travel, and I think that's what I think musicians or artists, we kind of pick up what's internal, like your subconscious stuff, like stuff in dreams.
Yeah.
And then the external things, like Billy Joel having that conversation in a restaurant. You get the Springsteens and the Dylans, is like they're pulling from books, conversations, stories, people they've met, neighborhoods, city subdivision, whatever. They just pick up the macrocosm and the microcosm and they string it together.
Yeah, and grab a theme. On that line, have you seen Springsteen's Broadway show?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's available streaming I believe, on Netflix.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to check it out.
You absolutely have to see it because it's an insight into a truly iconic storyteller.
Yeah.
Right away, he says, you know what? None of those stories are true. He said, I rarely got 5 miles from home. Right.
Yeah,
All those epic stories of getting out on the road. And, he
right.
says,
He's a
none of it's
writer.
true. He's a writer, and he's grabbing the theme and the experience of youth and the anger and the passion. And he's crafting a great story. And, when you're writing a great story, I bet you agree, don't let necessarily real truth get in the way of a good
Get in the
story.
way of a good
Yeah.
story. Yeah, I think that's like the talent of a writer because they only travel so much.
Yeah.
Like Jack Kerouac, yeah, like how much did you really do that? Um,
Right.
but like you get into the mindset, Ernest Hemingway is like you get the Old Man in the Sea. Like a lot of this stuff is like stuff that you as a storyteller found a way to just be that creative. Like a
Right.
musician, a lot of that is just subconscious.
Right.
Like you're calling in the muse, and it's like your 10,000 hours to get good on the instrument. So then you can break rules.
Right. You got to learn the rules before you're allowed to break them.
Then come up with ideas like, well, yeah, this, you just be out there like Zappa with his like in his bedroom or in his living room with all the tapes, the live stuff,
Yeah.
studio stuff, and they say, hey, maybe this goes with this and this goes with that, and
Yeah. He's
have this
brilliant, dude.
non-sequential creation process, which I've
Yeah.
always been really into.
That's cool. Well, typically, for you, Phantom, over the last, let's just say 15, 20 years, for you, how has the technology allowed you to compress the timeline from inspiration, whether it's a flash or whether it's something you observed, to the finished product?
Well, like in the last couple years, is like I've always had multi tracks
Yeah.
connected in my bedroom studio because I like just being able to get to whatever. So I'm in a bedroom studio. I've got a bunch of stuff. Like on
Mhm.
one side of the room, I got all the CV Gate stuff connected to multi tracks, and then the other side, I've got more digital stuff, more like modern MPC, DAW type of stuff. So I've actually got like separated in my room a section that's more DAW, one that's like less DAW, more like.
Right.
And sometimes something comes to me, I just use it like open a multi-track, and I got a multi-track even connected to my DAW stuff. Because what
Right.
I find is I just record the rehearsal,
Right. You never know what you're going to use.
and I don't know what I'm going to use, so I just everything gets, and then I have it so it's all going to separate tracks. So
Right.
all my instruments are going to individual tracks, even in a rehearsal. So if
Now,
I want
are
to,
you engineering yourself, or when you're
yeah,
performing?
yeah.
That's hard.
So I just have everything going into these multi-tracks, so then I can actually get them and move them around.
I'm so jealous. That's the thing I learned I couldn't do and I didn't want to do.
Yeah, well, I figured out that's what I like to do because I'm kind of anal. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
like I want to be able to control like the compressors, everything about it. Like I want to know is I can take it and I can recolor it. So I can take it with no effects and then
Right.
put the effects on it with multiple things or run it through different processors
Yeah.
different things and I say hey it should be wet dry do it whatever and
Yeah.
I
But
just
what
make
about the timeline, though? That's what I'm really
for the
curious about.
timeline. I can put
Yeah.
stuff together super fast
But over
now.
the last 20 years, like exponentially, how much faster than, say,
I would
in
say, oh well, back in the
2005?
2005, man, it was a straight like Tascam
Yes.
Fostex thing,
Yeah.
and I always had a process of always putting that stuff together, but I didn't have the digital interface,
Right.
so it was a totally like analog. And because I was very familiar with it, I still could get a song done in a day, but the choices I made didn't have as many choices in the palette.
Well, I see. That's very
What
interesting.
I find today is like now I can do it in a day. It's the same day, but I can actually run a different what if I do this, what if I do that, what so I got all these what ifs I can actually run.
Iterating. I call it
Yeah,
iterating. Yeah.
yeah, I can do tons of iteration, and I can push it out and even send it to like SoundCloud that day if I
Yeah.
wanted to. And
Yeah. It's a good time to be alive.
so that like then I in the back in the day, it's like, well, how do I get it out? I didn't know how to get it
Right.
out.
We didn't have
Now,
all the self distribution channels we've got
now I
now.
can just push it out anytime I want. And then you do a video and do like a live Facebook.
Yes. Yes.
You do a live Instagram and actually do a rehearsal and shove
Right.
it out to Instagram and then clip it with AI and push it out and see you get immediate feedback. Is this the right direction to go?
Yeah. Now, how many people typically will you work with, or are you doing all the parts yourself?
Well, in nowadays, I mean, I used to have bands. I mean, the Phantom Electric Ghost has had, I've had drummers, I've had guitar players, but like now, ever since COVID, everything's just me.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to actually bringing people in, because I used to bring like drummers in, bass players, guitar players in,
Yeah.
but like so far, but I've always was the guy that wrote everything,
Yeah.
and I pretty much would have a demo where I did everything, kind of like a
Right.
Pete Townsend, kind of Pete
Or
Townsend.
Prince.
He
Or,
would or Prince, like
that guy's a
he'd
monster.
do like Lifehouse is all the whole thing's there, but
Yeah.
then Entwistle comes in and redoes the bass line,
Right.
and then Daltrey does a better vocal. Well, it depends. It's maybe not better. It's a different vocal than what Pete does.
Right. Right. What do you like? What do you want?
I
Yeah.
love the way Pete does Behind Blue Eyes. I mean, I like that. I like what he can do. But
Yeah.
Daltrey is necessary for certain songs, and he knows that. So
He's got a different energy, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you know what you can do, and you know what you can't.
Yeah. I always felt that Daltrey was more like physical vocalist.
Yeah.
Even watching him perform, he's very much embodied.
Yeah, Tommy stuff.
Like super exciting to watch.
Yeah, and he's on stage and he's got that bare-chested Tommy thing squinting into the mic. Is like, yeah, there's like that energy, that front man energy.
Yeah.
Well, Pete's got that introspective singer-songwriter thing going on, which I
yeah.
I love his solo albums. I think Pete's solo albums are awesome. But
yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I love his synthesizer work. Actually, because I thought Pete was like very influential as a synthesizer guy because of the way he comes up with the sequences.
Oh no, I'm not well versed in that bit of his expertise. Give me an example that I.
Well,
that
he
I
worked with like the ARP 2500, and to come up and he come up with a lot of the stuff he did on Who's Next.
Yeah,
was he's playing with ARPs like 2500s.
Right.
2600 ARPs and using envelope followers. Like, so he would use an envelope follower and then bring his guitar into the synth and use it to trigger the envelopes.
I see.
You get the Barbara O'Reilly kind of randomized sequence that you get like and it won't get fooled again. And then on Relay and a bunch of other songs like Who Are You?
Right.
Yeah, he had this way of approaching a synthesizer from not like a non-keyboardist, like a guitar player point of view, which coming from a different direction, you get a different result.
Right. I've always been fascinated with the guys that you're speaking of, them and you. Prince is a good example. Not Daltrey, Townsend. I worked for a couple of guys that they can work all the machines, which is very left brain, while staying in the right brain visualization creativity mode simultaneously. That's the thing that I could never do. And I made sure to just remind myself, do what you do, and then find some people to do what you do to help the process along.
Yeah.
But now we've got AI for that.
Yeah, well, that's what I think what's cool about AI is like if you don't know how to set up the CV or set up the workflow on a subtractive synthesizer versus like something like
right. Even don't even own that stuff though. Even if you do know how to do it, but you don't own it.
Yeah, you can run through digital workflows that mirror a subtractive synth like a Moog.
Right.
Or work through something that would mirror like a West Coast synthesis, which is like additive synth.
Right. All those things used to be in the rack, and now they're just modules in software.
Yeah, they're modules in software, and like I can work with both. And I certain things I think serve like the old 70s. I still would use a piece of 70s equipment just because I feel the way it sounds and the way I work with it contributes to the structure of the piece.
That's one of those arguments that the digital versus analog nerds will fight about all day long.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I want to know. How many single rack space units do you still have in the rack?
In the rack? Well,
yeah.
I got multiple racks where I still got rows. My modular, I have a modular setup with like 3 rows of modular modules that are all analog.
Right.
And then I've got some, I got a big like I don't know. It's a big box with wheels on it that has racks all over it, and like
Right,
you
but
start
what's the count?
getting.
50 units?
No, I
50?
only probably got 7.
Okay.
I made choices because I only
Yeah,
had limited
yes.
budget, right? So I got choices of what I got, but I do still have the physical stuff.
Right. When you think about all the power necessary, if you had 50, 70
Yeah,
rack mounted units, all the power that you need to just have them available,
yeah. I
it's,
don't. I made a choice that not have as many as you could,
yeah.
but to still have them and
Now,
still use them.
did you start this when you were a kid living at home with your mom and dad?
I started getting synths when I was like 15.
And what kind of conflict, if any, did you get from your parents?
Well, they wanted me to keep it in the basement.
Okay. But they didn't discourage you. That's good.
Yeah, they didn't I had been actually in music I class I had been a wind instrument like flute, clarinet, and I
Yeah,
had been
something
in
for me.
I had actually been in concert bands, jazz bands, marching bands, and I won awards as a music student.
Sure, sure.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you agree that that was some of the best musical times of your life?
yeah, because I mean my family was supportive because I actually played in those concerts and they would see me in the school concerts.
And you
And
clearly had a talent and a passion for it too.
yeah, and then I
Yeah.
decided, well, MTV comes along, like 79, 80, whatever. And I started, then I said, I got to get a synth. And then I got a Casio CZ101, and I got like a Model D5 with like a linear synth. And
Yeah.
I started getting sequencers from Korg sequencers and amps. And I had, bands, like basement bands, garage
Yeah,
bands.
yeah.
And everybody is like, oh, he's got the sense, it's like 82, 83. So everybody's like, oh, he's going to be, we were trying to be like Duran Duran, try to be like Flock of Seagulls. Try to
Great
be,
haircuts from those days.
yeah, I try to go play like Depeche Mode or something. It's like, so we in the Cure, like we're seeing these bands. It's like, yeah. And then sometimes I want to play Acoustica Duo or the Replacements. So,
Right, right. You mentioned MTV. I can remember playing the clubs in my 20s in the Gulf Coast of Florida, Clearwater area.
mhm.
And Thriller had just come out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was playing at this club in Seminole called the Loading Zone. And when it would come on, you stopped playing. And everyone in the bar, no matter what was going on, would
I'm
just
going to sit there and
stop
watch it.
and watch. And then when it's over, right back to playing Brown Eyed Girl or whatever I was doing at the time.
Yeah, well, I loved MTV because it introduced me like Joy Division, and I started seeing these bands like like the Bunny Man and REM. And I
Yeah.
was very much in Who's to Do. I mean, I was like into a lot of the stuff that's always on 120 minutes with like all these kind of alternative like college radio bands. The
Yeah.
college radios. I was listening to college radio because that's where I heard REM and I heard Camper Van Beethoven and bands like that. And I'm like, yeah, it's like I liked these kind of underground bands, and I'd always had an affinity for like the Velvet Underground
Right.
or like Alex Chilton and Big Star. I
Mhm.
was always into like the unsung band. Let me go find
Interesting.
that unsung band. And I was like, I had all the Velvet stuff, like everything that you could get with Lou Reed and the Velvets. I had everything, like live albums, bootleg stuff. I had everything. I was
Yeah.
running
Interesting.
it down, trying to like. I love the way he wrote. I liked it. I liked his act. His approach
Yeah,
to
and it's
lyrics.
clearly the influences set your path too. I mean, I was on the singer songwriter influential path.
Mhm.
Two older sisters, so it was all about Taylor and Croce and
Oh yeah,
Gordon Lightfoot, all those guys, and
yeah,
the
yeah.
girls too, Carole King and Joni Mitchell. So that's very interesting how you're formed early, and then you take the bits and pieces of that way into your own creation. It's a beautiful thing to be an artist.
Yeah, and then it's like I was all over the map because I love the Who. I love
Yeah.
Zeppelin. I mean I have everything Bob Dylan. Like I
I
like
don't trust anybody who says they hate the Who or Zeppelin.
yeah, well Zeppelin. I mean, I always like the Who a little better because I like Moon. I
Yeah.
just like Moon's approach. Bonham is
He
great,
does. Yeah.
but I like Moon's approach because he's kind of crazy. Like well, he was, but he's Moon the Loon. But the idea he had this punk aesthetic. He's going, and he's just kind of soloing the whole song. And he's
Right.
a drummer. And he's not being Ringo.
Right.
Right? He's like soloing through the whole song. He's kind of chaotic. And I actually thought I don't know. I just, every time I had a band, I was like listen to this Who song. You hear how Moon's playing. Like I want you to play kind of like that. Not exactly this thing, but
But the vibe, the feel,
the
yeah.
vibe that he had was like a really interesting punk aesthetic. That's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm gonna be out there like as a lead drummer.
Yeah. Have you seen the documentary? I believe it's called On the Beat.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
That's brilliant to see. The what we're talking about here is what influenced our artistry, but to see all these great drummers and then drummers that came after them, and even some that I had never heard of, talk
Hmm.
about why they loved Moon, or why they loved Bonham, or why they loved, whomever
Or the
influenced them
Motown drummers
around.
too. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Oh,
gained a
Gary
lot of,
Chester,
yeah,
Motown days.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like the Percy Shuffle was like there's something about like people don't realize how complex some of those Motown drum parts are
Right.
until you actually try to play them, and then, you
I've got a
really.
cool thread. I got a cool legacy thread back to those days. The
Hmm.
drummer on my first album, Firehammer and the Forge, is Gary Chester, New Breed drum teacher,
Wow,
played in Motown stuff. Gary Chester's great grandfather.
wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So to play with him, it felt like, there was a thread back in time to the early days of great, Motown and rock and roll stuff.
But
So
getting
shout
into,
out to Gary, or to Casey out there if you're listening.
but I think about like the technology, it's always been like an argument because I'll go back and before if we kind of seg into the AI, electronic musicians, like the first Moogs, like Moog, Robert Moog is like he was getting pushback from like all these artists, like traditional artists from the
I know.
seminary, from the the real core of
Yeah.
like artistry, and like, those things aren't real instruments. When
So
you have
therefore you are less than.
yeah, they were less than. So like the Model Ones to the Model 30s, 50s, like before you had the mini modes, they like there was a group of experimental musicians that said, we don't even need keyboards to deal with these things.
Right.
We can
Right.
just use sequencers,
Yeah.
use alt, and we don't need to think of it on a piano scale. And I was more always
Yeah.
in that mindset in experimental music. You don't necessarily have to have the piano as the bass trigger.
Right.
You can use something else as a trigger, and you can come at it at a different point of view, a
Right.
different perspective. And some people like are traditional musicians. Well, how could you do that?
The snobbery. Yeah. Yeah. It's sad because we're all artists, but I think the chase and the materialized commerce of music had a big part of that you can't cheat. If any of us are going to make it, you can't take a shortcut. And the technology was way too often, I believe, because of that commoditization of art, was
Hmm.
all part of that snobbery.
Yeah.
And AI, we're all experiencing the same thing, but at 62, I don't care what anybody thinks
Well,
because I'm not.
I think it's great to have the AI because I have access to give me a Neve board type of processor that's digital, right?
Right.
Make me, sound like, you get an idea. If you're trying to get the sound of like rumors,
Mm.
and then you say, well, give me the mic that Stevie Nicks was using to replicate that.
Yeah. It's
Replicate.
the ask for,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can it's like in terms of the tool set I like AI for is like give me a Jupiter 8 sound without having to pay 25,000 for a Jupiter 8.
Right.
Trying to find a Jupiter 8 or trying to find an EMS, synth. Like give me something
Right.
that simulates an EMS like off a Pink Floyd album.
Right. And I don't have to spend 25,000.
You're trying to get to that sound,
Yeah, there and again is the rub. It's the commerce of music industry and production. It requires you to have the job to earn a bunch of money so that you buy that $25,000 piece of equipment, all in the hopes of getting a hit, because nobody spends that kind of money just to do it for fun.
Yeah, yeah.
But now we can do that for fun.
Yeah, now you can actually get that sound. Is like you can go find like, hey, I can get a mini Moog that
Right.
has the overload circuit from 73 to
Right.
74. And
I love how technical that you are. You are so deep into the tech. It's
yeah,
just yeah.
I like being able to, and it's really some of my tech is like it's old tech. It's like
Yeah.
transistor tech. It's like
My tech's older than yours. Mine's all gray and it's between my ears.
yeah. And it's still like a place for playing like just a straight like organic like a Yamaha piano.
Yeah.
A real piano, like or
Yeah.
Steinway, or playing like a Hammond B3. I mean, that's the
Right.
tech for that. But there's something about playing like a really good electric organ or electric piano, playing something like what the Doors would play,
Yeah.
using that. It's like there's a reason I might look for that just because of the feel of it. But
Yeah.
like, if I have to replicate it through some plug-in, yeah, like I can't afford to get that. I can't find it. So then if I can't get a harpsichord, then I'm gonna pull it off of my 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 Roland Phantom or something. I find a harpsichord and it sounds good, and I'm like, I'll use
Right.
it.
Right.
That's what like, whatever's going to serve the song. Like, I want some strings, and I can't get a Stradivarius. So of course, like I can't get a Stradivarius. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try to get to every. But I like it because I was a wind guy. I would use wind controllers
Right.
to actually play like sax and flute
Yeah.
parts.
That way you can get the feel and the
Feel of it.
dynamic of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want the dynamic. So I might not just do that in the DAW. I'll
Right.
actually play it, and that's where
And
I mean,
for
yeah,
listeners that don't understand the lingo, define
a
DAW.
digital audio workstation like Pro Tools or
Yeah.
any of those systems. Which that's a big for a lot of hip hop people, that kind of started with the MPCs, and from Akai, and the ability to like you don't have to have a band, right? You could
Right.
be
You don't
on
even
your
need to have any
laptop.
musical background other than this is what I love the sound of.
Yeah, that's why I want like
Yeah.
when people got the actual drum machines, like
Yeah.
when you look at the history of like the 808. Yeah,
Yeah.
that failed in the market, but then people found them in the pawn shop, and the hip hop rap crowd say, "Hey, I can use this to make beats."
Yeah. And I think that I remember the 808, they really loved the
Yeah,
kick drum sample in that.
yeah, and the
It was
cowbell.
highly featured. Yeah. More cowbell.
More cowbell on that thing. But it's like there's something about the CR78, the one that that's famous for what Phil Collins did with it, his first solo records. But there's something about certain drum machines had these certain characteristics, and then the hip hop people take the TB03s and 303s and the bass machines, and people started realizing you can use these machines and you don't have to have a band,
Yeah.
and you can integrate it with samples, and then suddenly you don't have to have gone and done your 10,000 hours on the bass guitar or the piano. You could be this DJ idea. We saw the DJs who were flipping records suddenly could take those samples and actually construct songs. And you get
Yeah.
like the
Take
Bomb
bits
Squad,
and
you get
pieces. Yeah.
De La Soul, you get
Yeah.
Planet Rock, you get these people that actually can construct musical pieces. And you're like,
Yeah,
wow,
that's why record companies now have more sample clearing personnel and lawyers than they do A&R and actual musical people on their staff.
yeah, I mean, that becomes a big. I had a guy talk about the democratization of music
Yeah,
on earlier this year, and yeah, there's a group of people who are, and sometimes a DJ is really good at figuring out hooks. They can determine the hook, and when you're a songwriter, it's like, yeah, getting the hook is important, and if you can discern hooks and then put them in composition structures.
right.
These AI tools help you do that even more than the old digital tools.
Right. Now, when you're referring to the hook and the DJ, you're talking more of the sound, the feel, the rhythm than
Yeah,
the word, than the line, correct?
yeah, not
Yeah.
not the actual writing. And then you have to have
Yeah.
a rapper or songwriter to
Yeah.
actually write the lyrics. Now,
Now
yeah,
that's where my process begins because I'm a storyteller.
hmm
And I don't use AI at all on the word side.
if you
But
feel like that should be separate, right?
well, it's not. It's just I find that it doesn't give me anything that I don't already have. One thing that you can do with AI on the lyric side is give it a bullet list of what you want the song to be about and to feel like,
Oh, so like,
and and then say, okay, give me 10 ideas for what the hook would be if I was writing a song about this.
so you're gonna kind of whiteboard it out, kind of just.
Exactly. And typically what I get from that is something that I had already thought about anyway, because it's made out of the raw materials. But
Hmm.
it does validate and speed the process along. And then you take it from there and then build the pieces around it by, whiteboarding out the story arc. What's the emotional piece? What is each verse doing? Does it need a bridge? Is there something to cross? And that all depends on what the song's about. But you can do the same exact approach with just a rhythmic hook or a
Yeah.
sound or a vibe. And that's cool too. Something I don't do, but I admire when others do.
Yeah, I just think I like using tools, and like
Yeah,
I said at the beginning, and like the idea, like the Moog was not considered a valid tool in its day.
right,
Sequencers, people kind of poo-pooed like, "Oh, that's cheating." Uh,
right,
and then any of the electronic tools that started, digital since like the DX7 suddenly came along, and now you can do like a wider polyphony,
right,
and then you can actually get all these sounds that weren't overpowering. So like the engineers loved it. But the Moogs are very overpowering in the mix.
right,
So the DX7 is more, uh, I guess it's like a delicate tool. You can fit it into the mix. Engineers liked it a lot better because it wasn't just like Keith Emerson, like Lucky Man, just like overpowering the song, or Rush.
right.
You know, that's the Mini Moog, and it takes over the whole sound. Like
Yeah.
it's all the channels is it's using up all the headroom.
Right, right. Do you bring any other ears in for mastering and final track of the project, or do you just do
I've
that
used
yourself?
like I've been on sometimes the Ghost stuff has been on labels that actually went through like an engineering team,
I
and
see.
I actually had engineers do it. Um, but lately I've been doing, for the last 5 years, I've been doing my own stuff.
Yeah,
Just because I got better at it, and I've been doing it for a while, so I just said I'm going to do it. Yeah, there's always this, like, oh, is that overreach? Well, if you have a vision and you have a certain style, and you're not, my aesthetic is kind of coming from like a punk aesthetic or a new wave aesthetic.
right.
Where I'm not trying to be perfect, right? And I know there are people that could try to get it to where they think it's like what they think the industry standard is, but sometimes I'm coming from that kind of.
Yeah, no two people are ever going to agree on that.
Yeah, yeah, there's a different point of view. It's like if I
Yeah,
if I felt like I got it, I know what I've heard, what I want, and so
right.
since I can get to it and I like it, then I'll do it.
Yeah,
And some people don't know how to get to it, so then they gotta use somebody. So,
right. Now, what if any percentage of the material you've put out there has lyrics?
oh, I have a lot. And most of my stuff,
Like
and I
half and
really,
half?
well, in the last year, I've done more instrumental work than I've ever done. In the last year and a half, I would say like 70% of it is instrumental, and that's
Yeah,
not what I had been doing because I started doing Ghost stuff in 2016. There was all vocals and lyrics with electronic stuff. I mean, they're electronically crafted songs with lyrics and vocals and characters. Because I use vocoders. No, well, not vocoders. I use voice transformers, a
yeah,
technology from Roland to actually change pitch. So
yeah. That's remarkable tech. That yeah.
yeah, so I actually created a female character named Josephine Electric, and some of
Oh,
the
I
songs.
love that you're naming them too. I named mine as well.
So I created her, and I use her like that. The VT3 and a VT4 and stuff on a JDXI is like a VC330 to
Right,
which are all vocal transformer tech from Roland to do in the moment, not like after. Like Prince used to go in to speed up the tape to get to Camille. I'm using like stuff that's in real time. If I go through this mic and I run it through a transformer, Josephine can be done in real time. I've actually done her on stage with a
right.
mask on, but um, yeah, it's like I create like male and female characters with these voice vocal transformers, and then
Yeah.
have lyrics that come from the perspective of that character.
I think a lot of people would be surprised what many of the popular artists of today sound like sitting on their couch at home
Hmm.
with an acoustic guitar piano compared to, because like you just said, you can do the manipulation live now as well. It's not like back in the days of Milli Vanilli where they lip syncing and they're not making a sound.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's remarkable.
The way you can do like, and sometimes like I've gone, without the transformer and just do like my normal voice is more like a Lou Reed type of velvet type of thing going on,
Yeah, yeah,
like a spoken word type of singing. It's really like a poet, with happens to have music behind it, which I
yeah,
always felt like the velvet stuff was. It's
right.
pretty much a poet with the music behind it.
Yeah. Let me talk about a specific song for a moment, Phantom. As a guitar player, acoustic guitar player, I wrote in 1991, I think, a song called "The Original Sin,"
Hmm.
and it was inspired by an article in the news about Madonna. She was living in New York at the time, and she's very successful. And one of her things, supposedly, it was said that she would get in her limo and go to the barrio and pick up, her Latin lovers randomly.
I think I
And
heard about
so the song was all about that. And here I am. I wrote this song as an exercise in songwriting because I was active in the Songwriters Guild. So I write this song, but I never really played it because it required more of a poppy, dancey vibe. So I set it aside thinking, okay, it's a nifty song. But in 2005, I stopped writing altogether because I was a man without a band, as you've already said. And so when I discovered in January how far the AI had come with Suno and Mixia and some of the other ones,
it.
I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I'm going to take
Now you
Original Sin and I'm going to do it in pop and rock styles. And the 2 albums I released out of the 4, one's called Heart Beats, which is the rock one. And
Mhm.
Heart Throbs is the same 10 songs in the same order, but dance pop vibe.
Yeah, because you can do that.
Oh, yeah. And for me, going, oh my God, I can now hear anytime I want exactly what the song, how it was supposed to be sung that I could and would never
Yeah,
do.
because you have the technical capacity.
Exactly.
You don't need a bunch of studio musicians. You
Exactly.
don't need to go in and get on a Neve console and do it with like all the instruments that we require.
Exactly.
Like if you've got a vision for a concept, it's highly likely that if you just take the time to be there and not procrastinate, you can actually get it done.
Yeah, and learn how to ask for what it is that you need.
Yeah.
It's, as you know, it's an iterative process. I believe for Original Sin, I have at least 22 iterations before it
You,
landed on
yeah.
what I was actually looking for.
Yeah, that's the
And
thing
then
about
I piece them
yeah.
together.
They're about the chat prompt engineering, like prompt engineering. Because I'm a BSA, business system analyst in my day job.
Okay.
And I work in the finance insurance industry, and we've been using, Chat GPT and Gemini and Grok and everything else. But we do a lot of things with workflow now. We use
Mhm.
a lot, not just like prompts for like documents or questions, but
Sure.
actually workflow automation and
Exactly.
and having it go and do certain things based on certain conditions and machine learning libraries are taking these conditions and linking it to Python. I mean, I get detailed, but the idea is like you can not just use it like the way people use a Chat GPT app, but you can actually automate workflows.
Yes. Instead of asking it to do the work for you, you're asking it to organize your work in a way that you used to have somebody do for you.
Yeah, so all
Yeah.
that stuff that you would do in the studio, like the
Yeah.
engineering boards and the idea of like running the different scenarios is like you'd have to rewire
Yeah. I
everything.
love
Like
that you're in
rewrite
that
everything.
field because you're making decent money, I'm sure. And that's what pays for this passion of yours.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, being in the software, working for insurance companies, well, that's stable
I mean, there's
because they're
big
all
money there. Yeah.
yeah. And then I can buy my gear, and then that's how I'm able to still keep my old transistor
Well,
gear.
I want to make sure that you're using a points credit card to buy your gear so you can then use the points for more gear.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's just fun, dude. But yeah, I have seen like a lot of the traditional companies because of the software sense in the AI tech. There's less like at NAM. There was like less hardware showing up for like one of the first times I've ever seen. The amount of
Right.
hardware sense had been dramatically reduced,
Yeah.
and I was kind of sad about that because I still think there's a place for it. Like I understand that a lot of people probably like they don't see a place for it, but I'm still in the mindset that I see like a lot of shades, and I don't like to just lose some of that. But
Oh
that's
no, I'm with you, and I think there's a lot of people, Phantom, that are in the same mindset. But the hardware companies are not going to go to NAM as frequently as they used to because of the trend.
hmm
But the hardware is still out there, as we both know,
yeah,
for
yeah.
those purists that know there's a place in their
Especially
studio
like the
for it.
Eurorack community, like we're still modules are still coming out like fast and furious all the time.
Yeah,
Um, and so that in that world, like not maybe like it's kind of like a hobbyist thing, the Eurorack idea, but just having these modules that you can build your own synth.
mm.
Basically, the idea about a Eurorack is like it's a modular synth that's customized to your taste,
Yeah,
and it's kind of like a do-it-yourself project. And people can do it in the DAW world. They can mix and match things
sure.
electronically.
It was the interconnectivity protocol that made that possible.
Yeah,
Like
and it's
how do we connect these together? Yeah.
yeah, and it just like, so like I think the hobbyist that's using those plug-in kind of Euro racks versus the one that's physically going out and getting modules.
Yeah.
Um, but there's like I check out the Berlin scene and like people in like Norway and Netherlands, is Latvia. There's I know a lot of electronic musicians all over the world
Yeah.
where this is still like the thing. And I talk to I get connected to a lot of people who are still in that mindset of like,
Right.
yeah, why not customize my sound,
Yeah.
not just go for like the DX7
Yeah.
or go for the Juno,
I really like
my
what
own
some of
thing.
the German electronic artists,
Yeah, but
or
it's always
the
good.
German engineer mind along those lines is it's really cool stuff they're producing over there. Do you know the band from I believe the '90s, Münchener Freiheit?
Oh yeah.
They had a big hit with "Keeping the Dream Alive," but then they went to almost all electronic after that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That whole Berlin sound, Brian, would like Bowie was in the 70s in the German. It's that aesthetic. I mean, there's a rock scene there. There's every kind of scene, but
yeah. I've never been. Have you been?
I haven't been, but I've talked to people in the scene virtually on the show.
Right. Oh, that's cool. That's one of the blessings of doing what you're doing, Phantom.
Yeah, and it's just cool to just know that there's these hotbeds of creativity.
Yeah.
And you come, and there is this linkage now with, to me, it's like AI is just another tool, uh, like any tool that's ever come along, and people have resistance to any tool. The people like drum machines are terrible until
Yeah.
somebody like a drummer like Phil Collins uses one,
Yeah.
and then it's like you can use it. You can be a drummer and still say, I saw value in this.
Right. And there's many of them are very cleverly triggering them with an actual stick strike on the head
Yeah,
of one drum or another. Yeah.
yeah, the
Um,
trigger drums and things like that. Yeah,
I want to make sure I want to tell you about a passion project of mine before we
yeah,
run out of time,
yeah.
because I'm interested in your insights on it. There's a number of ways it could go. Um, a few months ago, I found a box of photographs from my life.
Mm.
And so they spanned more than 40 years. I'm 62 now. And so I went through the box and I'm organizing them by decade, putting them into folders to just make sense of it all.
Mm.
And what I realized in that process is they were telling a story of their own, given that I was an artist at a very early age, but I didn't realize it. I looked at the world through the eyes of an artist. What I began to discover as I put these pictures together and then looked at the songs that I hadn't recorded is that I had the making of a very interesting book called, and I've named it, it's already underway. It's called The Echo and the Voice.
Mm.
And it's an allegory of that struggle that artists face. The echo is culture's conformity, trying to force conformity on us. And the voice is that passionate thing that we can't help. It just keeps coming to us.
Mm.
And we either find a balance or we fall into the echo and we're lost forever. So the book is an allegory about that. And what I realized as I've been writing songs for 40 years is that the book that I'm writing has 5 characters, and 3 of the characters are musicians and artists.
Mm.
2 of them work together early on, and then they split up because they have different philosophies. One is deeply in the echo, one is deeply in the voice. So the book, the characters write the songs that I've already written in the book. I'm either going to end up with a record company, publishing company, that hires artists to play the role of the characters in the book and release the albums,
Oh, wow.
or work with people like you who can create that character artificially, and it would be uniform and consistent. So the entire album of what's the main character's name? Main character's name, Jonas Wilder. He'll have a sound, and then his partner Vince, they split up. He'll have another sound, and then there's another character later on who is a unifying force. I want to find the third voice, the unifying force. So it's going to be a female. I want to find her in the real world and get her to record the full album of songs. But the book will have at least 3 albums associated with it, which then sets the stage for screenplay or television
It's a
series.
multimedia.
Exactly.
Probably that's really forward thinking, because I think
Yeah.
that's where things are. 'Cause, like, you can take an idea, and they were like the old days. You have like a happening with the Velvets and Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
It would be, or even like the Mother's Invention. In San Francisco would have these happenings, and you have like models, actors, painters, everybody on stage.
Oh, everybody on, yeah.
Yeah, and
Everybody
everybody.
contributing, yeah.
Yeah, so this idea like that you can have multiple genres of art, have a project that's all
Yes.
interconnected. That's I think that's where it's at.
And crossing decades, because the core of the story is the potential loss of the bardic tradition, and how artists really are bards, whether they realize it or not. Either they're doing conformist art for the hits, or they're actually telling a true story from their soul, and that is going to be in there. What are your thoughts about if you had the opportunity to be the driving force of creating, let's say, Vince's character, who's more into, I want hits, I want to be rich, I want to be famous. We got to create a sound, we got to create the whole thing and have an album's worth of material. Would that be a project that somebody like you could get excited about doing?
I don't know if hits are my motivation.
Yeah, but this is just for a story, though. It's not
for a story. Yeah,
yeah.
The idea of it is a cool idea because that's the big struggle,
right?
In
the book, just so you know, he will ultimately fail.
But it's hard. It's hard to be like the Beatles.
Exactly, he will ultimately fail.
It's hard to be Quincy Jones, and to figure that out. Can you get a guy like Quincy Jones? It's like he had the kind of magic, of knowing how much of that should be art and how much of it is a hit.
Right.
And he used to be able to walk that line and get it done.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that tool set to be able to do that. Everybody can be like the, fifth Beatle, like George Martin, and actually
yes,
lads and get them to actually make the hit.
Right. The character in my book that is that person that you just described, her character name is Lila Hartman. And she has figured out how to walk that line, stay true to her vision and artistry, but still create something that the marketplace will purchase, so she has the resources to continue to stay true to her artistry.
Yeah, it's a hard line to be on.
It's a hard line, yeah.
Because a lot of times, like, when you're in it, sometimes you happen to, like, the audience happens to be with you. And
right.
So you'll have, like, Prince and Purple Rain. The audience was with him.
Yep.
But then, Sign of the Times is critically acclaimed to be like a better record. But not everybody that liked Purple Rain followed him to that.
Right.
He got a significant drop off. That went down to like a 1.5 million. It wasn't like 6 million people didn't get it. But that's artistically, the critics thought it was a better record.
But the marketplace ruined those consumers.
Yeah.
By getting them fixated on one version of Prince.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
See, it was very hard for him to get, sometimes he would hit it with like Diamonds and Pearls to get close back to it.
Yeah.
But he had a tendency to not want to be in that that mode of hitting what's the most popular thing with everybody, why somehow in sync with the audience in the times.
Yeah. He was such a visionary.
You're not, all the time. It's hard.
Do you remember the 1999 moment when Prince was awarded the Online Innovators Award and what he said?
I think I've seen an eclipse of it.
Yeah, he was so prescient. He's, like artists, we see the future, some of us. Prince said, he says, no, getting on a computer and getting on the internet, that's cool and all, y'all, but don't let the internet get into you.
Yeah,
don't let it get on you. And he was right. Look at what social media has done. And here we are on social media, but.
Yeah, but I was in that MPG Music Club, and he was like one of the first guys to actually have like a fan club where he actually sent like albums to you that weren't commercially available.
Very smart.
I mean, I actually had physical albums. He had downloads and physical stuff that you would get.
Yeah.
And I just was enamored. Like, here's this big artist that's acting like an underground artist, that's acting like REM.
Yes.
And acting like Who's For You.
It's beautiful.
Stuff. I mean, I thought that was amazing that he's this popular artist that still has this aesthetic.
Yeah.
That would be willing to do stuff.
Yeah.
Like the Black Album stuff that came out, like in the underground. There's all this stuff that people started wondering, like, is he actually doing this in the underground market? Because it's like sound billboard quality stuff showing up.
Right.
Where maybe he just, like, I want to have that kind of Dylan recognition that like the Dylan bootlegs that were out. You know,
Yes.
they seem like to me. I always suspected that. I mean, I can't prove it, but I mean, I suspected that there was something
Yeah.
like that going on.
I haven't seen it yet because it was only in theaters, but the biopic, the Dylan biopic, is streaming next week.
Yeah, I gotta see that because I'm a
Yeah.
total Dylan head. I got the basement tapes, like everything. Not this.
Oh,
I got
I believe that you do. And I think one of the things important for us to say is that we can learn from those guys, because social media, while it seems like a cesspool of division and bad stuff, we can learn from those guys that it's just a platform. It's what you do with and on the platform. And artists watch those films and reflect on the Princes and the Dylans and the Springsteens of the world. We can be more conscious about how we use the platforms to not just be rich and famous, but to get stories that can help society understand where troubles are.
I've always been more of like, I love the album format because
Yeah,
I think an album is like a novel,
right.
and
Tells the whole story. Yeah,
if you just go with the hit, like you don't know an artist by their hit.
yeah,
You know an artist by their B-sides and their deeper tracks.
right.
And if you wanted just like a very superficial experience with an artist, then just go with the hits.
Go with the hits. Yeah,
But if you want to know who they really are, it's like, reading Ernest Hemingway and only reading the freaking Cliff
right,
Notes. Like
right.
to read Hemingway, you got to read the book.
Yeah.
You can't just read it.
You're putting your thumb on the reason why the music business, driven by lawyers and accountants now, focuses more on getting the next artist that's going to have a big hit than they do on nurturing the existing artist to do another mind-blowing album that tells the story and that has context. We don't see the repeats like we did in the 70s with the Eagles and James Taylor and Billy Joel reinventing himself over and over again in spite of Rolling Stone hating him.
Yeah, I mean, I love Joel. I mean, I'm a piano player, so I mean, I like what he was doing. But I love singer songwriters.
Yeah.
Even though I like the punk aesthetic and the experimental aesthetic, I am enamored with songwriting craft that can actually make, I don't know, like pop songs that are like Beatle-esque, that actually have like an impact. They're not just popular because they're popular, but they're popular and they actually have artistic
something to say.
Something to say, right? Yeah. So when
I like a song that makes me go, huh.
Yeah, you just, I mean, if it's just got a hook and it's just got a beat, that's nice. But when it actually says something, like a Springsteen, his stuff always says something.
Let's swap albums, Phantom. You pick the one that falls into the best for you of having created a collection of 10, 12, however many. And then I'm going to give you mine. We'll listen and we'll get together on a call and we'll talk about that.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I have a lot of albums I could go through. Yeah, it's definitely. I love what you're doing, and the idea, like with the tech, is like tech can be your friend. It's like I get scared of people that use it too much of a crutch. Like if 90% of your art is being driven by like AI it's not you. Like
it's not you. Yeah.
If it's not, it's like if you're using it as a tool to help polish your work, and it's still like it's like 80% of that work is you, or 90, and the 10% was the use to polish it.
Yeah.
Or inspire it.
Yeah.
But not be it.
Exactly.
That's the rub I have with some people. It's like, oh, I'll just write that book.
Yeah.
Get it out there for my TED talk or my seminar.
Yeah, they're using it as a calling card. Yeah.
Write it.
We're almost out of time, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
I want to tell you about one song because I told you I started writing again. AI production has inspired me and opened the floodgates. I was in jury duty about 3-4 weeks ago, and I didn't get called, so I sat there for hours. I thought I'll make good use of my time. I started to write a song after being on Facebook for 15 minutes and just being my soul hurt because of all the ugliness. Everybody's calling each other idiots and assholes, and it's just all the name calling. So I wrote this song called "A Love for Hate."
Oh yeah,
and it's in a female voice, and I want the character in my book, Lila Hartman, to record it because she's the one that understands how you can create content that brings us together from the divide and
Mm-hmm.
recognize what we have in common instead of focusing on what we don't agree on. So give that one a listen to. I love your thoughts on it.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll have
cool.
to check that out. I love taking political events or just like social events
Yeah.
that trigger art has always been something I've been into, and I think it's
Oh,
like
that's awesome.
yeah, I think that's just a common theme. Like everything I as a fan,
Yeah.
and then as an artist itself, is like trying to actually take things and use them, not to just do beat focused things. Not that you don't have to have good hooks,
Yeah.
but like if you can make something that makes people think,
Right.
or it has layers, and you have to go do a second, third, fourth, fifth pass, and it's
Yeah.
not so obvious.
Right.
That's like any good writer, you put the like Easter eggs into things. It's like you want people to maybe go back and check. It's like, oh, I didn't recognize this was foreshadowing this.
Exactly. Or
This was
threading back to something.
yeah, yeah. I think that's why you want to create art that's like throwaway junk food art.
Yeah.
You want art that's actually going to be something somebody can like. Wow, they actually
Yeah.
will open it up again. They
And
will
relate
listen
to. They're
to
like,
it.
yeah, I relate to that. I feel that,
Yeah,
So
yes,
cool. Where are you in the world? What part of the
New
planet?
Hampshire, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. We're not that far apart.
That's cool.
Someday we'll cross paths, have a meal, cup of coffee, talk shop.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being here today on a Saturday afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Phantom.
MarkFirehammer.com. That's fully clickable. We were just live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We'll be on all the other platforms where you can listen to or watch a podcast by end of day today. And I want to thank you again for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you. Rock on.
Thank you.